but let me just try being loud. So it's Jess Riedel. I'm a physicist at NTUT Research down in Sunnyvale. But I've had an interest in assisting or getting learning more about the alignment community. And in particular, I've been working with Alexander at Timaeus and talking with some of these other folks. And so I wanted to present an idea we've been kicking around for just trying to start a proper alignment journal. So why do this at all? Why not rely on the alignment forum? So we want to bring together independent researchers, frontier labs, and traditional academics who I think now do some discussing online, but not the extent and the type that I think is most productive. We'd like to give academics and lab researchers who are interested in alignment, but need or want kind of that traditional journal. This is a proved thing that check mark. Who don't want to get in fights with NERPS reviewers who might be skeptical of alignment as a motivation, who want to get feedback. Specifically, if you're writing a paper that's motivated by alignment and theory, you want somebody who actually cares about that topic to give you feedback on it. And, there's this funny thing where Open Phil wants to encourage alignment research, and they give money to researchers who write proposals that say they're going to work on alignment research, and then they don't work on alignment. They just go work on what they were going to work on before and maybe like wrap it up a little bit. And so the alignment journal could sort of provide a center of expertise for assessing that to some extent. Yes. We'd also like to raise the quality and readability of research papers by independent researchers, especially those with less formal academic training. You probably heard some of the complaints is, too long-winded and not enough citations or comparisons of previous literature. And so journals can be a focal point for raising that quality bar. And then we'd like to combine, so we're calling this a journal, but we'd really like to combine the best features from traditional journals and conference proceedings, and also internet forums and social media. And so a good chunk of this talk will be how you try to get the best of both worlds. We'd like to just make this better, like by getting best of both worlds, try to speed up academic research, focus it on the most important problems, and then also just kind of filter and make legible the top results from the alignment research community to broader academia. Any questions so far? I'd like to, this can totally be a discussion. I will switch to the microphone if necessary. Yeah.
How are you defining alignment?
Yeah, well, that's honestly the biggest thing. I got a whole slide on the scope. Big problem, but let me talk about it at the slide. So yeah, feel free to interrupt. Okay, so this is the outline. I'm gonna talk a little bit about sort of what I see as the problems with the status quo, both in journals and in forums. What we could do to get the best of both worlds, which is going to be a desired list. I'm going to emphasize especially two unusual features that we were thinking of having, and one is something we're calling reviewer abstracts, and the second one is just reviewer compensation, paying reviewers. I'll go over some open questions about the scope, whether it should be archival, whether it should be the review should be confidential, what formatting, partnerships, that sort of thing. And then I'll lay out a little bit of like a vision or what concretely it would look like, and then slide on just extensions of where you could go if you actually got something that was useful for the community. Okay, so what's wrong with the status quo? I've got kind of journals and conferences on the left, forums and social media on the right. Journals and conferences are ridiculously slow. They've got, all the classic problems with credentialism. You are reviewing a paper and it's supposed to be by people who are very established in some sense. But many criticisms are NP. They can be like easily checked. So credentials for reviewers are really not that important in some cases. I think this shifts the influence to senior researchers, which I don't really like. Young people are where it's at, man. Nepotism, old boy network. you can get rejected and there's no appeal. You can go to another journal, but there's sort of no way around that aspect of it. You get just like 2 to 3 reviewers per paper, regardless of paper importance. I think this is like a really weird thing. Paper as a unit of research, as I'm going to say later, is like not a sensible. It doesn't concentrate your effort, your scarce resource, which is the expert time, on the things that matter most. It's not good at using reviewers, I think. Fetishizes the trappings of academia. You do things that look like research, even though maybe they're not important. You get that, of course, in all platforms, but I think the journal format pushes that especially. If the review process is confidential, you have this insane situation. I'm kind of bolding the things I think are most important. If the review process is confidential, you have this insane situation where the most valuable resource, expert time and attention, they come in, they read the paper, hopefully carefully. They spend the time writing a report saying what's good and what's bad about it. And then if it's confidential, you just like throw that bit away and you boil it down to like one bit of information, accept a journal or not accept. This is an insane waste of resources. And of course, if the review is anonymous, the reviewers can be lazy and bad and have consequences. So yeah, please do interrupt if so forums and social media. All the problems, many of these things are not specific to review, but they are important to review. So what's fashionable, what people pay attention to, big crowd effects. Every comment you make is another attack surface. You often get poor filtering by expertise. So the discussion can be sidetracked without really excellent and what's often costly moderation. Now, the alignment forum, I think, has like a ton of great tricks. Community reputation, karma, they have by hand monitoring, but I think it's still very imperfect, and the level of quality could be improved. But maybe the biggest thing is you just often fail to attract the best commenters. So again, I'm using the word commenter over here and review over there, but it's the same idea. We're trying to like, who's going to look at this paper, discuss it, figure out what's good and bad, and try to raise the attention of it. The vast majority of experts have no interest in getting in online fights. You only see the ones that do. I think that deep readings of papers are very rare when people are just talking about them on social media. People are replying to the surface level of what's really quick. They are talking about maybe what's the important topic or what personally interests them, right? And the problems become worse as the papers become more technical. And often it just ends in silence. Nobody bothers to write something. This one I think is maybe underappreciated. A review and discussion online is basically only useful insofar as the reader is already invested in time in considering reading the paper. When academics and researchers are looking around, what should I read? What's going to solve my problem? Like you look at the paper, you look at the abstract. By the time you say, I'm going to go read some social media discussion on it, like you're already you're in deep. Whereas, was it published in a journal is an immediate indicator that people use.
That one seems kind of false to me in that, like, when you see something on a forum, often, at least I do, I read like title, first couple of sentences, straight to comments. It's like I actually sometimes see comments before I've invested any time in the paper.
Oh, but what I mean is that reading through the comments is like, I think, a bigger investment than what it takes to read the title and abstract. I just think that's a total other level. Whereas the getting an overall thumbs up, thumbs down, which is what the journal provides, right or wrong, is like an immediately actionable thing that's much quicker. And I'll show you how we're going to try to combine that a little bit. But one way you can think about it is just that you read all these comments and there's often no take-home message. Maybe there's the best upvoted comment, maybe some people critique it, but there's not as much consensus. And then finally, or maybe not finally, the commenters and authors may be asynchronous. Not often a big deal, but there's something about somebody writes something, somebody replies a month later, they never get a response. Sometimes you don't get the back and forth you want. And you can just end up you know, if everybody is on an equal footing and you end up having to spend a lot of time rebutting papers that are obviously bad experts. So here I'm going to go through these a little bit quicker because some of them are just flipped or they're not all.
I had a
Yeah,
comment
please.
about
Sorry.
previous thing. You have a bullet point on the left for nepotism, old boy networks, etc.
Yeah.
I feel like there's probably about as much of that on the right side.
I think that's right. There's something about the having this like formal structure that's a little more of a straitjacket that maybe makes it stronger. But I think you're right. You can tell another story where social media gives like, you know, people who already have outsized influence even more influence.
Yeah, not even. I guess it's not really about forums or social media. It's a really small group of people, like the alignment community or whatever.
Yeah.
Super small, and so I
Yeah.
don't know, like
No, I think
path dependence or something is like stronger.
I think that's totally fair. I have to think about. Yeah, it's not. I think you're right. It's not clear right off the bat where it's a stronger effect. But we're going to solve all those problems anyway, so it's fine. Don't worry about it. Okay, so what do you get out of journals and conferences? I think just the fact you get higher quality discussion by gating discussion to experts and then having somebody moderate it. Some editors do a better job than others at moderating. I think Oliver does a better job than many editors at journals of moderating the review discussion. But nevertheless, I think the moderation is important, but the gating plays a huge role. The editor recruits. This is like the big thing you waste all your time doing as an editor. It's like recruiting for better and more appropriate reviewers. So they do like a matching process. Social media, of course, is something of a matching process, but this is by humans is actually thinking who's the best person to take this paper. Maybe not a huge one, but again, I think it's, I don't know if Schelling point's the right word here, but it's a point where people are all getting together to talk at once. And that generally involves some sort of organization saying, hey, are you available? Are you available? Can you do this now? Which the journalists can provide. I think you get more deep readings. Just people look more thoroughly when things are in journals. They like feel a certain degree of responsibility. But anybody's submitted more than a few times knows that you don't always get the ratings, but I do think it's more common. Yeah, reviewers feel some responsibility to review the overall quality, not just what interests them, like on social media. So you'll more often get like practical, constructive feedback, like the way you introduce this doesn't make as much sense. We turn this around all the way down to like little things like typos. And again, I think this forces mundane but important choices, or important changes, better citations, comparison with the existing work, more concise writing, that often you just don't get feedback on in a social media type context or forums. I think the low cost to desk reject obviously bad papers is actually pretty useful and pretty good. But of course, it comes with the fact that there is no appeal process. That's go hand in hand. And of course, it has some established prestige. That's why we're interested. The biggest thing, I think, just probably the biggest single thing, a huge advantage the forms of social media have is that they're fast. It's just so incredibly important. Science is cumulative. You want to stack a bunch of insights on top of each other. You want people to learn things quickly. And the delays in the journal process, not as bad in conferences, but still not great in conferences, I think is a big issue. You get more review work out of people in some sense when you make it frictionless and easy to start typing. But the editing, viewing for a journal is often it's incredible how bad this often is. Self-nomination. What I mean by this is that the editors don't have to know you exist. Like credentials aside, the editors don't have to know you exist, or you have the interest, energy, or time to review right now. You just show up and do it. And so as an editor, when you're doing the review process, you kind of like don't know who's already out there and be like, oh yeah, I would instantly do this. I already care about this paper. It's easy for me. That is, I think, a huge aspect of using the scarce time and attention well. The review effort, I think, in some sense, scales with paper notability. As I said, papers is a really bad like unit of measurement of research, and you really want community attention and review on results to scale. Most results don't need anything besides a cursory glance, whereas the really biggest things benefit from big discussion. And it's living. You can keep doing it after the paper's been published. This is another huge thing. It's of course a little bit tension with the having everybody having one discussion at a time, but obviously you don't want to throw that away. And then finally, transparency. Everybody can see this. So this is the stuff we're trying to combine together. Okay. So one of the big things where we tested out on the proceedings for this conference, although this hasn't been done yet, although I think what we've got so far is really great, is a reviewer. We're calling it a reviewer abstract. I don't know if it's the right word for it. But the idea is the published paper is going to appear with a normal abstract written by the authors like regular, and then a reviewer abstract that's written by one or more of the reviewers. Probably one, too many cooks in the kitchen, I think.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. And then it's kind of implicitly accepted by the authors. The authors can always withdraw. Probably we don't want to have an adversarial process where we still publish your bad review. You can think about that, but probably they have to at least say, well, okay, that's basically fair enough. I think the difference between I wrote it and I'm willing to say it's fair enough is just enormous. I think all the people here are really great. All the people who submitted the conference proceedings are really great, but still, it's just like natural human foibles is they like talk up their work. They don't quite say the caveats and whatever. And it's just like amazingly effective reading some of the draft reviewer abstracts we've got, where you're just like, what would I want to read as a reader before I looked at this paper? It's like what somebody else said about it. And so I'm excited about this. It's probably 1 to 3 paragraphs, maybe a little bit longer than a normal abstract. But it's going to be indexed a lot by the reviewer effort and interest that we can get out of them. So the idea is the editor is going to ask one of the reviewer, write the reviewer abstract. We've all the material during the discussion. We've got released this like Creative Commons, whatever by attribution license, so they can just literally copy paste stuff from the review process in there. I think this is actually less burdensome on a reviewer than you might think. When you hear the abstract, you think, oh my gosh, I got to review a paper and I got to like write this like public thing. But when people are writing a report, they already often are writing something like an abstract at the beginning. And especially if somebody told you ahead of time, just like, think about how you would write it. I think it's less than you might think in terms of putting additional burden on it. So again, I may say this a few different times because I think it's important, but the main goal is to help a reader decide on a paper's merits if the paper is worth their attention and worth reading. So not just intended to like really like kind of summarize it in this perfunctory way that you sometimes get at the beginning of reports where it's just meant to prove that the reviewer actually read it. And not, it's not just a place where you can say 5 stars, 1 star. But it's the abstract the potential reader would most want to read before reading the full paper. Summarize the paper's contents, caveat strengths, weaknesses, implications, relationships, prior art the authors may not have highlighted. Identify which readers are likely to find it worthwhile. The thing we're really looking for is like right? What do you want? You've got a paper, and what's the magic thing you would want in front of you to help you decide whether to read it? It's like you want your best friend who already read it to be, let me tell you what's actually in this paper, right? And like that's what we're trying to approximate. I think this is not so weird either. Already Open Review has these paper decision paragraphs. And the big difference here is that the reviewer abstract would be addressed towards potential readers rather than towards some sort of like legal documentation of the review process. So just be worded differently and structured differently. But I think this is not like a crazy thing. And then the idea would be that one reviewer would write it, and then at the end, all reviewers have the option to sign the review with their name or with a pseudonym or anonymously. I think anonymous signatures still left some credence to the review, or to the, I should say, to the reviewer abstract. You know, if the journal has a reputation for picking good reviewers, it still means something. This is a way for people to get intellectual credit for writing good reviews. You could, if you wanted, you could give them DOI numbers. You could make them, you know, don't call them a reviewer abstract, call them like a short review or something like that, or a short, you know, something. And a lot of people can get publications from it. So this will be different. So moving on to reviewer compensation, we're testing this out on the ODYSSEY conference proceedings. We haven't paid these out yet, so who knows? Maybe we won't. But we said what we promised we would pay these out. We have the cash for it. So we are doing $200 for a useful review, something that kind of meets the bare minimum of like fulfilling your duty as a reviewer. Another $200 for what is just in the editor's opinion is an excellent review. $400 total for that. And then another $100 for writing the review app. $500 max. And so you're looking at like a bit under $1,000 in expectation per paper that you review. Needless to say, we'll pay reviewers for reviews, whether they're you know, positive or negative on the papers. So you got to pay for all the ones, not just the papers you accept. And you know, Alexander thinks that we should 2 to 4x this. I don't really know how to set these numbers. It's a very weird thing to me. So you'd be looking in the range of $3,000 per paper in terms of just the reviewer cost. So maybe it's just interesting context of sort of a speed bump at $600. I was totally ready for like some sort of laser. So let's see. Yeah, so you got to send out tax forms at $600 to an individual. Journals already charge to publish papers like in the $1,000 to $5,000 range. Most journals don't do this, but the ones that do, it's like in this range. A academic paper in the United States costs of order $100,000 to produce. If you just like look at the academics' time and lab equipment and all that stuff. So like a few percent of that we think is like not at all a crazy thing for good review. Yeah.
I'm actually curious where that number comes
from. I'd heard this number from people, and I also asked ChatGPT to estimate it. I think it's like if you just for like, so first of all, it's like a little bit cheaper in theory, and especially in fields where people publish a ton of short little papers. For like really expensive bio fields, I'm sure you can get up to, you know, $250,000 or more per paper. I think it just sort of checks out. It's just like how much does a postdoc make? How much with their benefits and like all this other stuff? It's in that ballpark. Yeah, I think it's weird. I don't know if you know these like blood donations and Israeli daycare examples, but you like worry that you sort of undermine, you make this a transactional relationship, you undermine the kind of academic trust and sense of service that reviewers often have. Reviewers could get upset about the editor's judgment about what good reviews are. Think there's bias, if you waste time on disputes about this stuff. Maybe it looks weird or untrustworthy to outsiders. It's like just another way for rationalists to get like more of the sweet open fill money. I think it's a real risk. But I think there are big upsides, potential upsides. I think you can incentivize quality properties. People do respond to cash, not always, but often. I think if we're trying to get good experts to review, maybe they think it's weird that we're offering cash, but it's sort of like, you know, I can't just start offering $1,000 per review if I'm running the journal out of my basement, you know. It's like, oh, there's like at least somebody behind this guy. It won't be a total loss if I get fine. So maybe we can bring in some skeptical experts. And like this is sort of fun. It's like, you know, I think a lot of time researchers, there's some subset of researchers who like to review, but feel like they can't because, you know, they're good at it, but they can't because they don't get any credit for it. I don't think it would be good to have like full-time reviewers, but I think something where like some fraction of researchers are spending up to a quarter of their time reviewing. I think it's not a crazy situation. I'd like to see that sort of specialization. So maybe we can support that. So this is just an experiment. I'm optimistic, but pretty unsure. We may do some testing to try to figure out what the actual impact is. We're doing on time. Think about what I want to go through here. Let's talk about this scope. Oh, the guy left, didn't he? Oh man,
It's okay. I had the same question and I can channel him.
very good, very good. So I think this is the hardest aspect of everything. I think a major issue is that in journals and institutions, the natural way to organize subjects is not by goals, but by like the tools that you use, knowledge, skills, method of analysis, that kind of thing. And those are easier to judge whether that, is this guy writing a math paper or is he writing a philosophy paper? Is easier to judge than like, is this useful for some like long distant thing? Maybe we don't want to be adjudicating, is this useful on each and every paper, useful for alignment or for whatever goal you're thinking. So it's anything to try to understand how neural nets work potentially useful for alignment. If there was a pure theory study of SLT focuses on, the base framework, no contact at all, the gradient descent, is that an alignment paper? I don't know what the solution is, so this one maybe we can get some discussion on. Yeah, sorry, you can't see it. This is a little at the bottom here. But the main things you can imagine is one, just choose your scope to be based on tools, not goal, but that you think are reasonably well correlated. This sort of subject probably, usually on average, contributes to alignment. Then stick to that regardless of apparent alignment relevance of any individual submission. On the other hand, you could just do like pure editor prerogative, whatever I think is just for alignment goes. Maybe if you were just reject things very, very quickly, you say, sorry, we're making a call here, it's out of scope. You hear back within 2 days from the editor, maybe the submitters aren't too annoyed by that. Or you can have some sort of really obnoxious process. We ask borderline papers to like explain either in the paper or in a separate letter to the editor what their relevance is.
What do you think about having it just be one of the things the reviewers do to judge whether it's relevant to alignment?
So you would probably not want to make that a criteria of acceptance. Just because then you'd have this big investment in people, you send it out for 3 people to review it, and then you decide that it's actually not relevant, and then all that stuff is wasted. You could certainly, you can have some sort of tags on it, like this is the editor's best of, these are the papers most useful for alignment afterwards.
I think I'm thinking
seems
you've
hard.
already selected reviewers who you think are experts in alignment. That's
Oh yeah, no. I think they could be good judges. The question is just like, do you want them to go through this long judging process on a bunch of papers? I think it's really costly and sucks up a lot of energy.
there could maybe be like a pre-processing step where you ask the like pool of reviewers, is this
Yeah.
even an alignment paper?
That's right. You could. Yeah, could you do that quickly? Maybe you just have everybody gets a bunch of like push notifications to their phone with an abstract, and they go like, yeah.
So I'm not channeling Adam anymore. But so, and this is, I was kind of waiting for the end for this, but it maybe it's
Please,
here
go for
too. So the main concern I have about whether or not a journal for alignment is useful comes from whether or not research for alignment is useful.
Yeah.
And if research on alignment is useful, then I think a journal obviously we should have. But there's this brain drain thing where people end up in companies instead of nonprofits or universities, partly because that's where the goal is. The goal of alignment is in the company, and you're trying to align it with something. And people who think they have an idea for how to do it, they just go there and do it. Maybe they find a use for their idea, maybe they don't. But it's very much, there's kind of a trust boundary that's forming where like either you trust Google to be a place where your idea winds up in a product, or you don't. And then only people who don't trust the big labs to handle their idea are the ones left that don't want to work for them, and then the research is all between people who have trust issues, and so there's not an agreement on what alignment is. There's not an agreement on what are the right tools. There's not an agreement on what are like whether the tools are working for the goal, and so on, and so that's a problem, and then it's all very expensive to pay for. On the other hand, if you were using LLMs in the screening process,
I would say
reduce
this
the
is
cost.
pretty cheap on the whole spending by the community. I think it's pretty cheap. But
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, so maybe it's worth it. But
sorry, so go on.
but my question for you is like, why not address these problems of it's really expensive to well, I don't know, maybe it's not that expensive, but why not address this question of like what is alignment by just having 3 LLMs from different companies say yes or no, is this paper about alignment? And if they all say no, then that's rejected. And the models are all accessible, so people can iterate on making their paper like related to alignment according to those 3 models based on their own, so
Well, so the editors, of course, have access to the models that they could use to make this judgment call. So, in some sense, it's a strict value add if the editors want to put in the time, other than, I guess, some sort of appearance of objectivity.
yeah, and the trust, and what the reason I'm suggesting is to
Yeah.
make the trust issue a little bit less of a problem. Because it's not like, oh, I got rejected because Eliezer doesn't like my, Eliezer told OpenFill not to like my idea. And it's like, unless Grok and Claude and, Gemini are all agreeing this is not alignment research, then at least it gets to the next round of review. Anyway, that's a suggestion, and whatever you think what it is, and I don't want to hang up the topic.
So I'm one of those people who don't trust the labs to do the right thing. And just n=1 survey of me, I would much rather have the editor decide if my paper is alignment relevant than have an LLM decide if it's alignment relevant.
I guess I would. So first, I would say you mentioned is alignment useful, like, or is research useful? I think it is. I think the sort of research that we're thinking of here is in the normal sense of like what's publicly supported research or what's privately supported research. And yeah, I think insofar as research aligns with the bottom line, then you can just count on it to be supported. To some extent, you worry about it getting public, like not being kept internally. But I think really we're focusing on the stuff that wouldn't be, is more long term or wouldn't be so well supported by the labs. I think the that's what I get right now. Talk more. Yeah. Oh yeah,
wanted to
it's
say something?
sorry.
This is just
Yeah. Here's a different tack to take.
Yeah.
Be maximalist. Have your tag filtering. Have your tag system and let people use it to filter. So have something like this tag means this is from an area that we have already in advance said we think things in this are maybe alignment relevant, and a tag for the author submitted an additional explanatory note for this is why I think maybe this is kind of borderline, but this is why you should believe it's alignment relevant. And tag for, our reviewers voluntarily read this thing as part of pre-processing and agree this is alignment relevant. And if you like, you can just unclick the one that says, unclick all the ones except for reviewers said it was wrong.
You're talking about once the review has already gone through, right? Like
Yes.
Yeah. So that I don't worry too much about because I feel like the alignment forum or social media. Certainly we can put it on the website, no problem. I worry more about how. Right. Again, I just keep saying this. The scarce thing is like reviewer time and attention.
Yes.
And how are we deciding whether to send things out for review? Have people worry about it. And so you have
as a potential reviewer, I'd much rather review something that GPT-5 said was related to irrelevant to alignment than something that GPT-5 said was not at all related. Or if all 3 have grown.
I basically agree. I think the editors can use those tools.
Right.
Yeah.
Wait, do you rather have those? Do you prefer those tools over nothing, or prefer those tools over editor making the decision?
I think I prefer it over the editor, unless it's Jess, which case it's fine. Yeah, if it's yes, I'm like, actually, okay, well, we won the editor lottery, then fine.
I do think all of this is going to depend on researcher community buy-in. Do they think the editors are doing a reasonably decent job?
Gonna get written in white, a white background. This is definitely in white.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's one of my problem with this. It feels too easily to hack.
I mean,
Especially
yes,
since
it's
you
very
can.
hard to hack, so that's it. That's definitely a feature.
So one of the aspects of hacking it is people are trickier to hack, especially because we're kind of diverse and we're not that
Also,
standardized.
you can't
But-
just run it through the ask Claude edit fix something, ask Claude fix something,
Yeah,
you can't
yeah.
do that with the real editor.
And a journal is a social activity rather than an epistemic activity. We like to think of it as we want it to be an epistemic system, an epistemic process. And up until recently, it had to be run by people. Now we have a luxury of it. Some functions can be left over to AI. But the point of an academic journal is still quite social. In many ways, it's actually signaling that this is a paper that is relevant. We're putting credibility on the line for it. We're thinking that it's epistemically solid, but we also want people to understand that. So that human aspect is actually quite important. But then, of course, you want to set up a diverse system in the background. You probably want to use as many tools as you can to also make it hard to do the hard things.
So we're getting close to time here. So let me. Is that? No, that's not working.
I will say this, I'd say 95% of people who self-identify as alignment researchers, I would not want to be the editor. I would be like, I don't want anything to do with this.
Okay, so let me try to
We
skip
want to have a top 5%.
Top 5%.
to.
Yeah, but we might disagree about who is the top 5%. That's
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, okay. That's yeah.
Okay, so prestige, or rather partnerships, kind of blend prestige or leverage existing communities, case of line form, or get researcher buy-in. The last one is just most important to people actually respect the journal. So you can imagine various collaborations here. I'm going to talk a little bit about what some basically last couple slides about what integration with the alignment forum could roughly look like. I wish I'd drawn some pictures, but it is still all well text. I apologize for that. So again, Lightcone hasn't committed anything here. These are just ideas we've been kicking around. So we're trying to get the benefits of the alignment forum and social media without driving away skeptical authors who are used to publishing in traditional journals. I don't want it to look good to both groups. Now, review process is ultimately a moderated discussion. So Form Magnum is kind of the underlying software and what's wrong in the alignment forum. It's potentially a nice platform for this. If you've ever used Open Review as an editor, in my opinion, you know that it's terrible. But you would just do it perhaps confidentially. I would like to see if we can keep backward compatibility. If reviewers are old and stodgy, they can interface by email if desired. It's not too hard thing to accomplish. You still have a reviewer, a normal traditional looking journal website. Editors recruit by email. They can submit their review by email if they really want. But then the idea is, so you do the review process, but then simultaneously articles that are submitted to the journal for review appear in some form on the alignment forum.
This is after test pre-decks, right?
That's right. That's right. We won't just have them go for a day and then back down, and everybody's like, he was test rejected.
Yeah.
No, it won't be like that.
No, but these are like we're gonna actually
review. Yeah, we're not going to try to keep the people who get rejected, like they won't stay up on the website or anything like that, but really wanted the internet sleuth. We're not going to hide the fact that they did submit and rejected. That information's often easy to get anyways. So maybe it looks like individual posts, or maybe it looks like a batch post on the alignment forum, 5 submissions or something like this. Maybe authors can opt out. We don't want authors to feel like submitting to the journal is an obligation to engage with commenters who they may not know or trust or anything like that. So we would like for authors who like the more traditional experience to be able to do that. So part of that, of course, we want to have discussion for people who want to discuss paper. So part of that is giving the author some sort of plausible deniability, like, the alignment forum links to the journal website, but the journal website doesn't necessarily link to the alignment forum, that kind of stuff. But one of the big things that having the same alignment forum does is that participants on the alignment forum can very easily say, oh, I see that paper, like I'd be a good reviewer for that. I'm interested in it. So we're trying to get that sort of activation energy very easy. They can, of course, just immediately start writing a review. Maybe they write what will be a comment in the publicly on the alignment forum post. But either they or somebody else could say, hey, this is a really good comment. Like this guy should review in the paper. So hopefully get that very quick feedback loop. And then you can make the journal website link to any discussion forum, including the alignment forum if they want. Maybe you can, I sent off there, but maybe the authors decide, they start looking at discussion, they're like, oh, okay, this is probably fine. Maybe you don't want to give the authors that decision, I'm sure.
Or sentence cut.
Yeah, I know. I just mean, there's reasons you might want to give the authors more or less ability to customize this. There's a lot of details you can talk about. Alignment forum users, I'd like to be able, so again, they'd like to be able to upload the paper, especially if it's a single post. And then after publication, you'd like the reviewer abstract. I shouldn't say review; it's not the review process, but just this distillation of the review process into your abstract. Be able to upload that independently, see who wrote the good critiques and criticisms, and a lot of people get credit for that sort of stuff. And you might want to try to retain some sort of an artificial deadline to get some of the benefits people like out of the CS conferences. You don't have in journals where it's kind of go on forever. This is sort of speculative. You can have some sort of time frame spent within this time period to be eligible for such and such and such. Yeah.
Mostly sounds great. One thing I don't like is that the paper would go as a blog post on the alignment forum and then it would disappear together with like any discussion that was in the comment.
That's right. I think the discussion has to stay with the paper for sure.
Yeah, but like okay, so then if something goes on the alignment forum during review and then it gets rejected, the alignment forum post stays, right?
That's right. So the idea would be that it doesn't even necessarily it's not marked as this was rejected or anything. It looks like any other alignment forum post.
Nah, it would be formatted differently. People would be able to tell.
Maybe, yeah.
Which I think is like, I think that's worth it.
Yeah.
This is how open review works, right?
Yeah.
Do everyone knows which paper are you? Can you are on the review?
Yeah, I mean it's open, yeah.
But
okay,
But to be clear, this would be after like disk rejects, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
So this is like all these things are pretty probably pretty reasonable, like submissions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why I also think it seems okay.
I think the tension you identify is this spot on. You don't want to lose the discussion, but you don't want to make authors feel like if they get rejected, it's going to be paraded around in front of everybody for a long time.
There's also a value of seeing both accept and reject for anyone who wants to publish and like know what
the level is.
Yeah.
No, and the CS community right there. I think the physicists would not stand for it, but the CS community is willing to.
I mean, we put our things on our side while they're under review.
Well, physics does that too, but we won't leave like, here are
Yeah.
reasons for rejecting the paper on the internet in perpetuity.
Yeah.
That's pretty intense. But I admire it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. It's sort of a. I mean, it's just a choice that one
Yeah.
makes. I guess.
I didn't know that this was how open review worked, and if so,
So
that,
you can tweak it. You can have non-open reviews on
Mhm.
open review.
but there is okay. So there is precedence for
Yeah.
Okay, then I think
Well, the
let's
proceedings,
go for it.
instance, proceedings now work like
Yeah,
this.
but I mean, from like is
Well,
it
Come
how
on,
how,
Riedel,
how
Riedel
no I mean
conferences.
like how alien is this to like academics?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is like
Yeah.
I think that's important
That's a good. Yeah.
because like on an online forum, if I write the shitty post,
Yeah.
I can remove it, but typically I wouldn't. I think I can remove
I
it.
think I was very skeptical. Haprika was in favor, and then we kind of just used the open review system that a lot of people did. This is for the proceedings, and
Uh-huh.
I guess also a bit for the journal. And I think we kind of felt like, maybe it's not that bad. Maybe it could work. Yeah, but it's still, yeah, I don't know.
All right. That's. Oh yeah, this is worth saying very briefly. So in order to get a decent journal, you need some sort of reasonably well-respected board of editors. Several areas of alignment, get along reasonably well. That's a prerequisite. So it could be a good platform for prizes.
Yeah.
Especially at the beginning, it's just a collection of respected people. And also you could. I think a lot of people are excited about this idea is retrospective review of existing published papers with or without the cooperation of the author, like how you want to do it. So again, I think that's a place where you could expand, where you bring in more reviewers, you ask reviewers to spend more time, maybe pay them more if it's like a very important paper out. And you want a big expert to spend a long time thinking about it, maybe you give them $2,000. Who knows? Okay, I think that's the end. So again, none of this works without recent buy-in. So let me know what you want with the alignment journals, and Alexander will make it happen.